At least 16 people are killed in Nigeria's Benue state. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. In business, Zimbabwe has launched a new currency to stem the ongoing forex crisis. And in sports, South Africa's sports minister to back runner at hearing. Well, our teams are in Nigeria and we are following the pre-election run-up there. So let's now go to my colleague, Richard Ntar, who's in Abuja.
Karen Roberts, thank you so much. And to our viewers across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining CGTN's continued coverage of Nigeria's elections. I'm Richard Ntar, live in the capital, Abuja. Karen, we woke up to some very sad news. 16 people killed in the central state of Benue state. It is reported that 16 people lost their lives, and it is believed to be as a result of herdsmen actually killing people in that area. The herdsmen and the farmers seem to have a history of violence in that area that has resulted in thousands being murdered over the last few years. Well, security forces are on the ground as we speak to restore the peace. They are also investigating the matter. This happens just 3 days to the elections. It is believed that events such as this will drive voters away from the polls come election day. All right, to get more on this story, we're going to actually question Deji Badmus and Kelechi Makalam, who are standing by. I'll start first with you, Deji. Thank you for joining us, Deji. 16 people killed in Benue, it is reported. What more can you tell us about their deaths?
Well, Richard, what we've been gathering is partly what you have just reported. We understand the attack actually happened yesterday and that the herdsmen, suspected herdsmen, now invaded the community. It's a community in Agatu local government area. That local government area has a history of incidents like this. So we understand the herdsmen invaded the area and then opened fire on the villagers as they were asleep, and that as some of them rushed out of their house to flee the village, the gunmen opened fire on them. So we understand 16 persons were killed, but there's been no official confirmation of this figure now because the head of the military commander now in that area, because the military actually is carrying out an operation in that area known as Operation Wild Stroke, just to check incidents like this. Now, that military commander said he still does not have the complete casualty figure and has actually said the number may not be up to 16. We're still waiting for confirmation now from that commander. But it's actually a surprise that this would happen, given the fact that there is an ongoing military operation in that area. So we're still waiting for further details now on the attack. But so far, what we're getting is that 16 persons were killed and that this attack happened overnight. Agatu community, we know, has that history of attacks of this nature. We're waiting for further details, Richard.
All right, Deji, let's stay with you. The Kaduna state governor is actually saying 130 people were killed. I'm referring to Nasir El-Rufai. What is the government doing about these killings?
Well, first is that the federal government has condemned the killing. In fact, just the day after El-Rufai made the disclosure, the government condemned it. And I know that the president of the country has actually met with the Kaduna State Governor El-Rufai. They had that meeting, I think, the day before yesterday. Of course, the details of the meeting not disclosed, but El-Rufai coming out to say, initially it was reported that 66 persons were killed in the attack, but then El-Rufai coming out to say the number had actually gone up to 130. But I should say also that we still do not have what I would say an independent confirmation now of that figure, 130. I believe things will become clearer as the day goes by. But it's become very clear that there was indeed an attack in that community, not just in that community, but in some communities now in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State. And it appears, we do not know why, it appears this was a reprisal attack. I'm talking about the attack now that led to the killing of 130 persons that El Rufai said. It appeared it was a reprisal attack, but things are still somewhat hazy for now, and we're following that story very closely. We have people on the ground to actually confirm and, dig deeper to find out what exactly happened and indeed how many persons were killed. But what's in the public domain now is that 130 persons were killed. The government has, of course, condemned the attack, and we understand security agents are now in that community. El Rufai, as a matter of fact, has met with both communities. I'm talking about the Fulani community and the Adara community, trying to preach peace. So we just wait and see how, what comes out of there as we move on. But no doubt it's quite sad. It's not something that should be happening at this time, especially as we move closer to the rescheduled election on Saturday.
All right, Deji Badmus, as always, thank you for that excellent reporting. Thank you for your insight and analysis. Moving on, Nigerian's foreign minister, Jeffrey Onyema, makes it clear to the foreign envoy that we are sovereign and do not dictate to us. Those are his words in a briefing to the media. And this all happening ahead of the elections to be taking place this Saturday. Our correspondent Kelechi Amekelem has more on this very impressive story. Let's take a look.
The meeting between the foreign ministry and diplomats comes after some Western envoys criticized the suspension of Nigeria's Chief Justice only weeks to the elections. Diplomats from the US, Britain and the EU said President Buhari acted without legal support in suspending the country's top judge, and the suspension could affect the perception of the election's outcome. Those comments continue to draw stern reactions from Nigeria.
We're a sovereign country, and the line shouldn't be crossed from exhorting us to and wanting us to succeed and wanting these to be really democratic, a really democratic process, to dictating to us.
Relations between Nigeria and foreign envoys continues to dwindle in the heat of elections. Just weeks ago, an influential governor and member of the ruling APC threatened that election observers who meddle in the country's politics would return in body bags. The elections were meant to hold last Saturday, but it was suspended to next weekend. The Electoral Commission cited sabotage and poor weather as reasons for the postponement. The government and the opposition rejected those reasons and said they will not tolerate further adjustments.
Most importantly, Mr. President and all Nigerians absolutely demand that on Saturday elections should be held. And we cannot accept, and we will not accept, any excuses or any other reason. They have to be held on Saturday, and nothing less will be acceptable to government, and indeed, I'm sure, to Nigerians.
The Electoral Commission says elections will hold by Saturday, but as late as Wednesday, there were still reports of voting materials being delivered to wrong addresses. Kelechi Amekelem, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
All right, let's talk to our political analyst, Kevin Okoye, who is standing by. Kevin, thank you for joining us here on CGTN Africa Live. Our government, the Nigerian government, is talking tough about those who could possibly tamper with election material, is also warning foreign observers not to interfere with the politics of Nigeria, and our government is talking tough. To that, you say what?
Okay, Richard, thank you very much. For me, it's been an interesting set of words that have been released all through this period. For me, we are a lawful people, and because we are a lawful people, we need to ensure that we make proclamations or advices within the ambits of the law. And what our electoral law possesses that anybody who engages in electoral malpractice or any disservice as a kind will face 48 months imprisonment upon conviction. So it's not just enough to even get someone who basically commit these crimes. The person needs to go through the electoral process, and then the person needs to be convicted by a court of law to ensure that he now goes and serve time for this. So for me, we shouldn't just play with words, because we need to be accountable for these words, which we will be able to speak out both now and for many more years to come. And with regards to the foreign observers, we noted that in the 2015 general elections, foreign observers were invited to Nigeria. And what are the reasons why these persons come? They are come to be able to lend their voice to the fact that we have a credible democracy in Nigeria. We have a democracy where people participation is held. Ultimately, we are the greatest democracy in Africa. And so we need people to understand that we are not doing things arbitrarily. And so the election observers are here to play their roles, albeit different persons from different wings. We need to allow them discharge those functions and indeed tell the general populace that we have completed elections in Nigeria and we stand for credible, free, fair, and great election process also in Nigeria. Richard?
Okay. Kevin Okoye, speaking of the election observers, do you have any proof in your experience that they are interfering with the elections? And secondly, how the diplomats, the foreign diplomats, take to these suggestions?
Okay, largely there are no proof that they are interfering. If you notice, whenever elections comes, two words come to bear. We say election observers, election monitors. All of those persons, even by dictionary definition, show that they are in no way to interfere or to meddle in their affairs. And so if we have done basic authentications of these individuals and they have been ratified to come and observe elections, INEC has also given them guidelines they'll be able to stand by with, then we should not be worried for these things, except maybe we have individuals planning to commit some crimes or to do a couple of actions that we do not want to see. That's why they did not want the international audience to be able to see these things real time. So for me, I would say if they don't have anything to hide, then we shouldn't be scared to have observers, as the case be, observe our elections, and then also the collation process, and indeed the announcement of the results come the close of the general elections on Saturday.
Kevin Okoye, thank you for that update. Thank you for your insight and analysis. Also, still moving on, INEC, the Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission, says they are ready to provide free, fair, and credible elections. No excuses this time. Our correspondent, Philly Haza, has more on that story. Let's go to him.
INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu has been meeting with political parties, foreign and domestic election observers and media representatives at the International Conference Center, Abuja. He's reassured the stakeholders that the Commission is ready for polls on Saturday. The presidential elections were rescheduled last week as a result of logistics and operational challenges. Professor Yakubu says they're better prepared this time.
We have been making good progress on logistics. All other arrangements for the movement of personnel from the local government areas to the wards are on course. We reported that we achieved 95% configuration of the smart card readers nationwide. I am pleased to report that we have now achieved 100% completion of the configuration.
Personnel and materials for the polls are expected to arrive at all the 774 local government areas by Thursday. The Commission is also reiterating its commitment to ensuring a peaceful conduct of the election. It says it continues to work closely with security personnel, including the police, military, civil defense, and other relevant agencies. The INEC chairman says political parties must end campaign activities at midnight local time on Thursday and encourage them to take advantage of the window to engage their supporters in order to improve voter apathy. Over 84 million eligible voters will be hoping to cast their ballots on Saturday for 73 presidential candidates, including incumbent Muhammadu Buhari and his main challenger, Atiku Abubakar. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
All right, Nigerians across the country are still counting their losses as a result of the postponed elections. I mean, business meetings canceled. You have academic calendars adjusted and social engagements such as weddings. Our correspondent Sam O'Malley has more on this story. Let's go to him.
The shift in the presidential and National Assembly elections is coming at a huge price for some ordinary Nigerians, like this couple who never knew the shift could affect their wedding plans. Tell me how you felt when you realized that the date of your wedding was clashing with the shift in the date of the election.
I felt bad because the other perishable things that need to be consumed maybe in a week's time that we have put in place. But now we can't use them anymore.
When I heard about the election shift, just at the last minute, I actually changed my mind from voting. I said I'm not going to vote.
I'm sure the shift is coming at a cost.
We've already shared cards. We shared cards. Our card is carrying 23rd of February. And I've already distributed that one. And not everybody that we gave the card to are on social media that we can send another soft copy to, you know. So there are so many people that we cannot reach at the moment.
Some of them have booked their flight ahead of time, and some of them can no longer make it because of the shift of the date, because that date is no longer convenient for them.
Are both of you participating in the voting process on Saturday?
I will definitely vote.
Why?
My vote can make the difference, so I will vote.
If I'm voting or not, I'm not doing it for INEC. I'm doing it for myself. So I'm going to vote. I will vote.
As Nigeria prepares to go to the polls on Saturday, a lot are still optimistic that the election will hold as they look forward to electing their next president. Samson Omale, CGTN, Jos, Nigeria.
And staying on a more positive note, a group of Nigerian artists are producing a musical video appealing to Nigerians countrywide to maintain peace ahead of Saturday's polls. The country is at risk of possibly falling or spiraling into violence, and these particular musicians are doing all they can to stop that. Let's take a look.
The song had a catchy tune. The young women gathered outside the northern city of Kano to shoot a video pleading for Africa's largest democracy to keep cool.
It's talking about the peace, how people will be united. So how to promote peace in the society. No violence, no crisis, no anything.
Within hours, the video is expected to blast across Nigeria's social media, reaching over 190 million people and a vast diaspora that enjoys Nigeria's homegrown film industry, Nollywood. Other copies of the video will appear in DVD markets dedicated to Hausa language films. The last-minute delay of the vote until Saturday has, however, raised tension in the country. Nigerians have been urged not to let the upcoming polls be a reason for violence.
This one is a message to all the people, all women, men, young, big, all. It's message. Even anyone they hearing this song, to understand something. Oh, let me go and find job. I can't stay like this. Or if election come next week, I will go out and fight with someone because of money.
The song addresses the unemployed young men who are recruited at election time to cause trouble. While the 2015 election was the country's most peaceful in history, presidential candidates have pledged to ensure peace ahead of Saturday's polls. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
Well, Karen Roberts, the candidates are ready, the officials are ready, and INEC says they are ready. Campaigning ends Thursday local time, midnight. For the team, I'm Richard Surlanta saying thank you so much for watching, and we'll be right back here, same time tomorrow. Over to you, Nairobi. Thank you very much, Richard and Tar there in Abuja with the team. We are going to a short break. Don't go away, lots more to come, including... We update you on preparations for West Africa's other election this weekend. And the African Union and the United Kingdom agree to cooperate on peace and security issues.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Senegal is gearing up ahead of Sunday's presidential elections. This will be the country's 11th vote since independence. Minister of Interior, Alai Ndiaye, has been meeting with various election observers as part of efforts to ensure a smooth and credible vote. Observers include members of the African Union, the Economic Community of West African States, and Economic Community of Central African Member States. While the minister says voting will take place in over 15,000 polling stations, an estimated 6 million people are eligible to vote. Observers have appealed to voters to maintain calm during the exercise.
6,919. Voter card distribution is ongoing and will continue until the day before the elections. To the Senegalese living in the diaspora, they will receive them on the actual voting day. We're optimistic and convinced that the presidential elections, slated for February 24, 2019, will be successful.
Nous pensons qu'il y aura une élection libre.
Based on our observations, we believe that there will be a free and transparent election. For example, the 250,000 cards that hadn't yet been distributed are currently being distributed, so we expect the Senegalese people who are yet to collect their cards to do so they may practice their democratic right.
Well, 7 years on, President Macky Sall is facing 4 contenders in the first round of voting. It's the smallest presidential field since 1988. 2 of Senegal's best-known opposition figures were ruled out because of corruption convictions. Sall is the favourite to win the election on Sunday, boosted by a first term that propelled economic growth, although critics accuse him of jailing his rivals for political gain.
With the election just days away, the voters are gearing to cast their ballot. President Macky Sall is likely to secure the top seat for a second term. However, heavy-handed crackdowns by security forces during protests have prompted accusations that the incumbent has an authoritarian streak. Rights groups say it represents a crackdown on dissent in a country long seen as West Africa's most stable democracy. Frustration with the incumbent is palpable once again among the educated youth who struggle to find jobs. However, many voters and foreign backers applaud Sall for boosting economic growth to over 6%, one of the highest rates in Africa last year.
The magnitude of this victory, with the appearance of a plebiscite, expresses the immensity of the people's expectations. I understand completely. Tonight, a new era begins for Senegal.
Opinion polls are banned in the run-up to elections, but a widely cited survey conducted by a Senegalese data company in November gave Sall 45% support, while none of the other candidates had more than 16%. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
To South Sudan now, a workshop aimed at ending violations against children is currently underway in the capital, Juba. South Sudan has vowed to take concrete action to protect children by preventing their recruitment into any armed conflict.
Participants at the three-day workshop are discussing a final draft that will lead to a comprehensive action plan aimed at preventing violations against children in armed conflict regions. They are motivated by shared desire to help delist South Sudan from a UN report that rates the country as a persistent perpetrator of grave violations against children.
The children of South Sudan need peace and they need freedom. They need to be secure like all the children in the whole world. They need to be doing things that children do. They need to go back to school. They need to be productive members of their community in future. And that cannot be done within conflict, and that cannot be done if they are part of the armed forces, or if their schools are attacked or destroyed, if they are denied the humanitarian access. All those things cannot happen. The future of the children in this country cannot happen in that background.
There are 6 grave violations that continue to be committed in South Sudan, including abduction, rape, and other forms of sexual violence. Participants have been challenged to come up with resolutions to be adopted and implemented by South Sudan. South Sudan's government has pledged to ensure that children are protected rather than recruited as fighters.
There is a standing command order to all the field commanders to report any illegal recruitment of children to the army. The Department of Child Protection under Assistant Chief of Defense Forces for Moral Orientation has conducted numerous workshops in the divisions and units how to discourage children joining the army and how to identify children and report them to the nearest civil authorities.
The country's opposition party also reiterated its support to the government's move.
Let us move together with our brothers and sisters in different countries to make sure that we are respected as a family of the global world, respecting the rule of law, respecting the human rights, and respecting the right of children to demobilize them in all our ranks.
The resolutions of the three-day forum hopes to create a framework that will prevent the future suffering of the children of South Sudan. Chomgono, CGTN.
The African Union and the UK have agreed to work together for peace, security and development across the region. The two sides signed a memorandum of understanding to formalise the partnership. AUC Chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat and the UK's Minister of State for Africa, Harriet Baldwin, have met at AU headquarters in Addis Ababa. The two leaders discussed common interests, particularly in the renewable energy sector and other areas identified during the last AU-EU summit in Abidjan.
We have decided to establish a high-level strategic dialogue between the United Kingdom and the African Union. It is within the same logic of what we have done with the other permanent members of the UN Security Council. This partnership, which we want it to be dynamic, covers many areas: peace and security, governance, issues of economic and social development. All these within the framework of the annual strategic consultations that we are going to organize alternatively between the African Union headquarters and London.
In signing this memorandum of understanding, we've set out various areas in a rich tapestry of ways in which we will work together in the years to come for the security and prosperity and mutual benefit, working together on joint challenges such as tackling climate change and making sure that we maximise benefits from the demographic dividend. This is an important partnership that builds on the visit from the UK Prime Minister to 3 countries on the continent last August. It will see the UK work alongside and invest in and partner with African nations for our mutual benefit.
To South Africa now, where the continent's sanitation needs are currently under discussion at the 5th International Fecal Sludge Management Conference in Cape Town. Governmental stakeholders, NGOs and scientists are gathering to find sustainable business models in the human waste management space. While the private sector is also participating in what is largely an undeveloped and under-resourced sector.
The sanitation space is likely to come soon. It is this evolving business model of fecal sludge management in Africa that has brought some of the world's foremost experts to this year's conference. Here, governmental departments, NGOs, scientists and academics have come to find synergies that will allow for successful public-private partnership to service the continent's sanitation needs, which as shown will become big business.
We have got fantastic science now around how you can reuse the stuff that's coming out of human waste. High-value products like struvite, like proteins, like lipids, various chemicals, energy. And all of this amounts to dollars and millions of dollars and even billions of dollars. And this should be a huge attractor to creating a significant private sector enterprise.
According to the Water Research Commission, more than 2/3 of the globe currently has inappropriate sanitation services, with many of them right here in Africa. African ministers have already pledged in 2015 to a list of 10 commitments that will improve their country's sanitation status for the betterment of its people. But more is needed.
African governments should change the enabling environment and put in place all that the policies and the institutions that will facilitate private investment into sanitation space. What we need to do now to improve upon that is to ensure that governments put in place that enabling environment.
Companies are, though, tapping into Africa's growing need for sanitation services and products. And those with innovative water-scarce waste management solutions already finding a burgeoning market.
Working on finalising projects in East Africa at the moment, places like Burundi, Ethiopia, Tanzania. So because our units are all stackable and extremely strong, it makes it a viable option because we can fit up to 1,000 toilets, depending on the configuration, into these shipping containers, which makes it an easy route or an easy fix to be able to send to all over Africa.
But many here agree that governments and the private sector will have to find common ground on these sanitation issues, as the continent's population is expected to grow, further worsening an already vexing issue. While sanitation remains a social issue for governments and a profit issue for the private sector, many delegates here believe that both can find a lasting and sustainable solution that will ultimately benefit the poor. And new technologies in sanitation that are coming to the fore will also assist in overcoming financing obstacles. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Well, we are going to a short break now. We've got all the business news coming up, including Zimbabwe has launched a new currency to stem the ongoing forex crisis. And the bourse in Nigeria loses $500 million as uncertainty over the elections persists.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Zimbabwe has introduced a new local currency, RTGS dollars, in a bid to ease the country's severe foreign currency crisis. The announcement made by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe is expected to allow surrogate currency, bond notes and electronic funds to float freely against other major currencies. And banks will now be able to offer market-determined rates to buy cash dollars with the bond notes or through electronic economic transfers. The current setback in the southern African nation has resulted in increased inflation and shortages of fuel and food. Zimbabwe has not had a local currency since 2009, when it deserted the Zimbabwe dollar due to hyperinflation. Ugandan lawmakers have passed the minimum wage bill. The Gender, Labour and Social Development Minister will appoint a board to fix a minimum wage based on different sectors in the economy. The proposed law attracted a lot of debate from several legislators who expressed the need for such a law to eradicate poverty as well as to address sharp income inequality. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, however, has previously complained that such a law would put off investors. The bill will become law following the president's assent. Nigeria's aviation sector is not the only one hugely affected by the sudden election delay. The country's stock market is reeling from the sudden postponement. The bourse was estimated to have lost over $500 million as a result. Analysts are warning that the speed of recovery will depend on the direction of the rescheduled elections. CGTN's Deju Badmus has more on that story.
It's inching closer to a week now since Nigeria's presidential election was postponed. The trading on the Nigerian Stock Exchange is still slowly recovering. The market had climbed past a 3-month high just before the postponement of the election. But things came crashing down with a sudden shift. And it's not just the stock market alone that took a hit. Virtually every segment of the economy has been impacted.
Our estimation is that the economy has lost an estimated $1.5 billion US. So it's quite horrendous. Investors suffered losses, individuals suffered losses, SMEs, large enterprises, the political parties, and even the government. So it was a huge cost to virtually everybody across sectors and across the length and breadth of this country.
The stock market is gradually recovering, making up for some of the over $500 million it lost with the postponement of the election. On Tuesday, the market rose by 0.67% and consolidated the gains by Wednesday, rising by 0.64% or 78 billion naira in monetary value terms. But analysts say a full recovery, not just for the market alone, but for the entire economy, would depend on the rescheduled election holding and things going smoothly.
If at the end of the day we're able to have an election that is credible, that is fair, I'm sure that confidence will begin to return, both to the larger economy and even to the stock market. So if we're able to get it right, and you have a restoration of confidence, then it will be possible for the markets and the economy itself to begin to recover.
One good thing for Nigeria about this election is that initial fears that the exchange rate was going to come under severe pressure has not in any way materialized. Not even with the postponement of the election. The exchange rate has remained firmly stable so far. But one thing everyone agrees is that it's extremely important for the economy that the election goes smoothly without any major incident. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
In South Africa, state-owned airline South African Airways is expected to receive a cash injection of $442 million from the government. The airline still needs $844 million over the next 2 years before it can break even. Well, the country's national carrier has been struggling financially for years and is now near to bankruptcy. Adding to its woes, the airline has been ordered to pay its rival Comair $78 million to settle an anti-competition case. Comair, which operates British Airways and low-cost carrier Kulula, filed a complaint with the Competition Commission 14 years ago. It accused SAA of offering incentives to travel agents to book customers on SAA flights.
SAA is on record having indicated that we will need a 21.7 billion to fully implement our turnaround strategy in order to get to a break-even point. So that particular message took into account a number of risks that we'll have to deal with, including this particular one. So at the end of the day, notwithstanding the decision of the Supreme Court of Appeal last Friday, our position is that we need only 21.7 billion and not any amount more. So we should be able, in the event we are able to get a response from the shareholder insofar as our funding requirements are concerned, we should be able to address and attend to this particular matter.
Johannesburg, South Africa's largest city, is getting a facelift. Renovation efforts started a few years ago, but it's taking time due to crime and desolation. Many of the city's original buildings are also dilapidated after wealthier tenants moved out of the city to the smarter upmarket Sandton CBD. But the city is slowly transforming into a multicultural hub that's once again attracting corporate clients. Retail giant Edcon, which still has a presence in the city, is set to spend millions on a revamp of its retail outlet there. Sumitra Naidu reports.
It came as a bit of a surprise when Edcon announced a facelift for one of its oldest running clothing stores in the Johannesburg CBD. The retailer is running at a loss and is trying to find investors to recapitalize its massive debt. But it has plans to revamp this Edgar's store downtown, an effort to revive the brand and improve sales.
This developer, we've been working very closely. They're in fact improving the economics for us because they're bringing other retailers into this development. So actually our turnover should remain the same, our space should go down, and our total rent will go down.
We've got Edcon coming in on the first floor at about 4,000 square meters. They currently occupy close to 15,000 square meters of space. We're going one level lower, we're putting lounge shops in. We're going one level lower in the basement, we're putting in a gym there. It unlocks value for us as landlords and gives offering to other people and patrons in the CBD.
Joburg Mayor Herman Mashaba is leading a campaign to get the private sector back into the city.
This actually fits in so perfectly well with our plan as a city of Johannesburg, because when we bring people into the city, they need departmental stores, they need investments and so forth. So this for me was music. It is music to my ear.
Over $38 billion is being pumped into the city to reverse the decay. There will be an increase in police presence to make the streets safer. Hijacked and abandoned buildings are being seized and earmarked for redevelopment.
We've got already at the moment 84 properties that we've made available to the private sector to give us proposal to build high-rise building, affordable accommodation for our people. Within the next month or so, I'll be presenting to council another 80 to 100 buildings for redevelopment by the private sector.
It's a mammoth task trying to restore Johannesburg to its former glory, but developers have been extremely successful in some parts. Mabanang, which was once overrun by crime and vagrants, has become an urban art district that embraces the work-live-play concept. It's also popular with tourists. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
We're going to a short break. Don't go away, lots more to come, including China and Tunisia agree to establish centres to boost cultural exchange.
When you look at Africa, what do you really see? Do you see fast-growing, endless deserts and parched earth? Or do you see the biggest opportunity for an agricultural revolution in a generation? Do you see crowded, unplanned cities or vast, untapped markets? Do you see a population at risk? Or do you see a billion-strong opportunity to grow the next wave of multi-billion-dollar firms in Africa? When you look at Africa, what do you really see? Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
An agreement on the creation of Tunisian and Chinese cultural centres in the two countries has now become law, which is backed by the Tunisian parliament and the Chinese government. It was signed in China on May the 13th, 2017 and is valid for 5 years with a possibility of extension.
The House of People's Representatives approved at a plenary meeting the agreement signed between Tunisia and China on the creation of cultural centers in both countries. The Minister of Cultural Affairs stressed the importance of this historic agreement with Chinese authorities.
Under this agreement, the legal framework for the mutual establishment of cultural centers will be defined, allowing both parties to create a center in the host country. China is a country that respects the Tunisian identity, its heritage and its civilization rooted in history, and gives importance to its historical monuments.
Parliamentarians from all groups and political parties voted unanimously in favor of the law.
All MPs approved the bill, which is now a law. China is a political, economic and cultural partner. Building Chinese cultural centers in Tunisia will encourage youths to learn Chinese language. A new Tunisian center in Beijing will also introduce our country's art to millions of Chinese people.
Tunisian artists have welcomed the initiative. Many believe that China's projects in Tunisia will revive cultural life in the North African state.
China is encouraging coexistence as well as civilizational and intercultural dialogue. Actors, musicians, singers, painters and artists from all specialities and disciplines will benefit from this fruitful partnership.
During the hearing session at Parliament, the Minister of Cultural Affairs spoke about a possible involvement of China in supporting the Tunis Center for Digital Cultural Economy, recently created at the City of Culture.
Tunisian authorities estimate that at least 50,000 people, including children, as well as high school and university students, will benefit from the creation of Chinese cultural centers in the North African state. Observers pointed out that the strengthening of diplomatic and cultural ties between Tunis and Beijing will boost rapprochement between people of the two countries. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
To the Democratic Republic of Congo now, where thousands of people recently attended the Amani Festival in Goma, in the eastern part of the country. Amani, which means peace in Swahili, is in its 6th year and aims to change the perception of a country affected by conflict to one of peace.
The 3 days of festivities in Goma, the capital of the North Kivu province, brought together thousands of people from all over the Great Lakes region. The event is a rare opportunity for both established and upcoming artists to be seen and heard. One of the festival's biggest attractions was Congolese rapper and musician Sebastino Infrapper. He thrilled audiences with his famous blend of genres that mix rap and Congolese folklore.
As artists, we are tasked with selling a positive image of Goma. Even though it is a city that has been a victim to many conflicts and wars, people should not keep the same image of Goma forever. We have to change that.
Garde la même image jusqu'à l'infini.
This year's festival follows a tense period in the DRC after the December 30th national elections. Amani, which means peace in Swahili, was the main message at the event.
Our prayer is that what we are seeing today becomes the norm. There are many people from all over the region. We are here with our Rwandan friends, people from different countries, different regions, and this has brought us together. It creates a great ambience, there is peace, and if it could only stay this way, it would be a real win for us.
This festival is important because it shows that people can live together.
people can share and share knowledge.
Eastern DR Congo has been gripped by armed conflicts for more than 2 decades. Organizers hope that the festival can also set the tone for reconciliation.
We represent a small drip in the glass, and in order to fill up the glass, you will need a lot of people to fill it up. But we have a mission, and it's to promote peace and for people to come together and portray a beautiful image of the region.
Elections last December saw Felix Tshisekedi emerge as new president. He took over from Joseph Kabila, marking DRC's first peaceful transfer of power since its independence. Many residents here are optimistic that the country's new political chapter will provide a strong foundation for lasting peace. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
We've got all the sports news coming up for you after the break, including South Africa's sports minister throws support behind Caster Semenya at Court of Arbitration for Sport hearing.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
South Africa's sports minister has said that she'll fly to Switzerland to support Caster Semenya at a landmark hearing on proposed rules to restrict female athletes' testosterone levels. The Olympic champion is appearing before the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Lausanne to challenge rules proposed